As an emerging professional organization, we think it's important to recognize those in our field that are doing exemplary work. This year, we held an informational session about the awards process in the fall, and we collected applications. They were evaluated on 4 criteria. The nominees must have demonstrated through their work that they have a commitment to ensuring that research benefits society. The award winners also have demonstrated an alignment with the goals of NSF's broader impacts criterion or with other definitions for societal impact of research. Nomination packets include significant quantitative or qualitative measures of outcomes as evidence, which are evaluated, and the potential for the work to raise awareness about, growing, and sustaining the consideration of and attention to societal impacts. I'll now describe the ARIS's 5 awards and their criteria. First, the Impact Innovation Award recognizes recipients for developing new approaches to and strategies for engagement in the translation of research. This means that winners adopt and innovate methods and approaches to public service, outreach, and engagement by institutions and organizations. Winners in this category are recognized for demonstrating leadership in the development and scaling of new policies, processes, and tactics for achieving societal impact, including innovative approaches to engagement, translation, measurement, and other strategic areas. The next award is the Impact Goals Award. Awards in this category are based on advancing the research impacts goals identified by the National Science Foundation and described in the Guiding Principles document. In establishing broader impacts criterion, NSF noted 9 potential types of impact outcomes. They are inclusion, STEM education, science literacy, well-being, STEM workforce development, partnerships, national security, economic competitiveness, and infrastructure. Winners in this category are recognized for significantly advancing engagement in translation of research to public benefit in one or more of those particular areas. The third award type is the Emerging BI Leader. Awards in this category are made to practitioners and scholars who demonstrate great promise through their early research impact leadership efforts. The fourth award type is the Enduring Achievement Award. This ARIS award honors a body of achievement over time. Individual researchers or practitioners, collaborations, or organizations may have worked over a long period of time in undertaking research engagement or translation for impact. Award recipients in this category will be individuals or organizations that have demonstrated such long-term achievement or an established body of work. And the last award type is the Broader Impacts Champion Award. This honors individuals or organizations that have contributed significantly to the realization of the vision of broader impacts of scientific research. BI champions have played a role in defining and implementing the consideration of BI as part of research and have contributed to building professional community around this consideration. I would personally like to thank those who volunteered to serve on this committee with me. They are Nathan Meyer of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Beth Ambos, a former executive officer for the Council on Undergraduate Research, Allison Meadow from the University of Arizona, Mike Jacobson from Binghamton University, and Joy Weintraub and Amy Pratt from ARIS. I'll now turn it over to Allison Meadow to announce the winners of the Impact Innovation, Impact Goals, Enduring Achievement, and Emerging BI Leader Awards.
Thank you, Matt. I think there's a next slide. Wonderful. Thank you. The first award this year on our Impact Award Impact Goals category goes to Kenneth Stedman. Kenneth is a professor of biology at Portland State University. His research in vaccine preservation has led to several patents, and his work as a science communication fellow at Oregon Museum of Science and Industry led him to develop interactive activities like Meet a Scientist and Build a Virus for elementary students. And over the past 2.5 years, he has made numerous appearances on TV and in other media outlets to help the public better understand COVID-19. Stephen Percy, president of Portland State, said of Dr. Stedman, Professor Stedman's dedication to public health information and science communication represents a real scientific and public contribution. Critical to resolving the pandemic and allowing for a return to normalcy is providing clear, sound, scientific explanations of the virus, along with practical methods for protecting us and minimizing risks. Professor Stedman has done this throughout the pandemic and undoubtedly has helped people in Portland and beyond return to life more safely and rationally. Thank you, Dr. Stedman.
Thank you. Would you like me to say a few words, or are we good?
I think we have the next slide.
Thank you.
Great. Our second Impact Goals Award this year goes to the Pittsburgh Collaboratory for Water Research, Education, and Outreach. The mission of the collaboratory is to co-produce knowledge among universities, local governments, nonprofits, and community groups across Western Pennsylvania with a mission of finding sustainable, research-based solutions to the region's serious water challenges, including aging infrastructure and industrial contamination. One example of their partnership work is with Women for a Healthy Environment. They are examining health inequities associated with basement flooding, which is a particular problem common in lower income neighborhoods. Stuart Pickett of the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies says of the group, the Pittsburgh Collaboratory for Water Research, Education, and Outreach is an outstanding accomplishment. It is among the very best such activities in the nation and stands as an exemplar to other cities and regions struggling with the complex social environmental challenges of water, from hazard and risk to trends in water quality to bridging the research policy divide. This organization is a paragon of alignment with NSF criteria for broader impacts, as well as other leading theories of use-inspired research, interaction, and education. Congratulations, Pittsburgh Collaboratory. And the next slide. This is our Impact Innovations Award. And this year it goes to Julie Bailey of the University of Lincoln in the United Kingdom. Julie's professional profile demonstrates her many roles in research impact. She is an impact specialist and academic researcher with over 18 years working in research and research management. She is a chartered psychologist and HCPC registered health psychologist, a blended profession combining social science, behavior change, and impact. She's a published researcher, principal investigator, mentor, and impact strategist, collaborating internationally on the development of impact literacy, conducting sector-wide consultation and training, and supporting research managers and academics to develop meaningful approaches to lead change in the real world. And she is a patient advocate in vascular health. Her nominator, David Phipps, who is the Network Director of Research Impact Canada, notes that Julie's commitment to impact, alignment with NSF and other definitions of broader impact, and her efforts to advance research impact literacy has seen her work grow from the University of Lincoln to achieving global impact on research impact. She embodies the requirements of the Impact Innovation Award. Congratulations, Julie. And the next, thank you. Oh, and this is our new Emerging Broader Impacts Award for this year. And this goes to Adriana Bankston, who we just saw in the Fellows presentation as well. Adriana is a principal legislative analyst with University of California's Federal Government Relations. Adriana has made considerable contributions in the policy sphere around postdoctoral salaries, resulting in universities increasing salaries for postdocs and raising national level awareness of this issue. She has also contributed to policies surrounding science diplomacy and open science. In her nomination package, Harinder Singh, director of the Public Policy Prep and GPS STEM program at UC Irvine, wrote, Adriana completed her postdoctoral training in 2016 from the University of Louisville and has not looked back since then. In a very short period of time, Adriana has established herself as an expert and authority when it comes to policy and advocacy work for early career researchers. In 2019, Adriana was selected as the Policy and Advocacy Fellow of the Society of Neuroscience, one of the largest and most respected scientific societies. As evidenced by her accomplishments at the Society of Neuroscience, she did an excellent job and achieved much more than what was expected of her in that role. The impact of Adriana's work goes beyond an individual or a group. It manifests itself as a cultural change in ensuring the sustainability of the initiatives that she works on. Congratulations and thank you, Adriana. And our 2022 Enduring Achievement Award is presented to the Center for Science and the Schools at Penn State University. Originally opened in 2004, CSATS has been supporting STEM education across the state and the country through using ongoing research projects at Penn State as a context for teacher education. They have been involved in 297 grant proposals over the last 15 years and have worked with over 1,000 individual teachers across 24 states. One teacher, Kyle Simon, summed up his experience by writing, "As a 15-year high school science educator, I have experienced professional development from a variety of providers. Whether single-day events or weekend workshops, I have found CSAT's professional development opportunities intellectually challenging and engaging. More importantly, CSATS does something that I have not experienced from other providers. They help teachers center learning experiences on students doing science instead of simply learning about research happening in advanced research labs." Congratulations, CSATs. And I'm going to turn this back over to Matt for our final two presentations.
Great. Yeah, the last awards are the Broader Impacts Champion Awards. And the first recipient for this is Bruce McFadden, a distinguished professor at the University of Florida and the curator of vertebrate paleontology at the Florida Museum of Natural History. He's also the inaugural director of the Thompson Earth Systems Institute at UF, which is dedicated to advancing communication and education about Earth science systems in a way that inspires Floridians to be effective stewards of our planet. His involvement in Broader Impacts began 16 years ago when he began teaching a course on Broader Impacts, and since then he's developed several grant projects aimed at engaging teachers in scientific research, established the Science in Every Florida School program to connect scientists and teachers for K-12 outreach programs. He recently published a book on broader impacts of science on society. Despite originally being nominated for an Enduring Achievement Award, the awards committee actually unanimously agreed that he should instead receive the BI Champion Award, in part because, well, he literally wrote the book on broader impacts. He has been participating with NABI and ARIS since he served as a panelist on our first NABI Summit in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Bruce McFadden.
Thank you, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction. And thanks to ARIS for this recognition and honor for a part of my career that has been so inspiring and personally rewarding. I also want to thank my nominators and letter writers in support of this nomination. I know how much time these take. Like most of you, I can't imagine a better part of a scientist's career than the opportunity to give back to society through broader impacts. I gravitated to broader impacts before they were even a thing. As a kid growing up in suburban New York in the 1950s, there was no finer place than the dinosaur halls at the American Museum of Natural History, although Yankee Stadium may have been a close second. I guess as a professional paleontologist now, I never outgrew my childhood fascination with fossils. Liking fossils, however, was not enough to know that I could actually make it a career, nor did I have the confidence to know that I could succeed. This identity was instilled in me from my 10th grade earth science teacher from Portchester High School in New York, Mr. Greenstein, and then when I was an undergraduate geology major at Cornell from my professors, Art Bloom and John Wells. Thanks, Mr. Greenstein, Art Bloom, and John Wells. I'll fast forward past my graduate education at Columbia, because in the 1970s, I was focused on taking courses, doing research, and getting a job. And I did little that might have been considered broader impacts in a modern context. During my postdoc the next year at Yale, the Peabody Museum of Natural History was renovating its fossil horse exhibit and asked if I would help in this process. Again, I found that this museum had an undeniable attraction to me. Although I don't work on dinosaurs, fossil horses, and giant extinct sharks like Megalodon, which I do work on, are an easy sell to the public audiences and are important examples of long-term evolution, which is something that I've been very interested in, not just from a research perspective in paleontology, but also science education and museum exhibit design. With all this in mind, I was therefore exceedingly fortunate in 1977 to land a curatorial research position in the Florida Museum at the University of Florida. With the exception of a few sabbaticals along the way and a year as an NSF program officer, I've been on this faculty ever since. I'm likewise fortunate that our administration is forward-thinking because education and outreach, which are of course integral to NSF's broader impacts, are not just tolerated by them, but are actually required as part of our annual faculty performance evaluations. Most of these activities so far have involved informal audiences and venues, but thanks to an NSF-funded project a decade ago, I started to take STEM teachers on our fossil digs along the Panama Canal. There I saw the passion for education that these teachers had, and therefore found it immensely rewarding to partner with them. This has led to many related K-12 partnerships, including, as you mentioned, Matt, our current Scientists in Every Florida School program at our Thomson Earth Systems Institute. For some time, I had thought about writing a book on broader impacts, but it just seemed like such a daunting task. I therefore thank my editor, Matt Lloyd at Cambridge, and my wife, Jeanette, for their support and encouragement along the way. As for educating the next generation of STEM professionals, soon after NSF started the broader impacts criteria, I saw the opportunity to start a graduate seminar to help the next generation of STEM professionals to succeed on their grant proposals, but even more importantly, for them to learn how to give back to their knowledge and enthusiasm to society. It has been immensely rewarding to see hundreds of students from this seminar go off and do good things related to broader impacts. They are professors, museum educators, K-12 teachers. They work for a state and federal agency, and one runs a private STEM tutoring company. I'm thus optimistic that the future of broader impacts is bright. The next generation of professionals will continue the vision of the importance of STEM in modern society. Thanks again for this honor.
Thank you, Bruce. Our second BI Champion Award goes to Susie Iacono. Next slide, please. Dr. Susie Iacono was the head of Office of Integrative Activities at the National Science Foundation. When she joined NSF in 1998, she started serving in many leadership roles, including acting assistant director and the director for computer and information science and engineering, the deputy assistant director for that directorate, senior science advisor, acting division director in computer and network systems, in information and intelligence systems, and the program director in IIS. Prior to coming to NSF, she held faculty positions at Boston University School of Management, was a visiting scholar at Sloan School, MIT, and was a research associate at Public Policy Research Office at the University of California, Irvine. Over the years, she's written journal articles, book chapters, and conference papers on societal informatics, an area of interdisciplinary research and education that integrates aspects of computer and social sciences. She received her PhD from the University of Arizona in Information Systems and her MA and BA from the University of California, Irvine in Social Ecology. Many of you who have attended NABI and ARIS summits over the years remember keynote addresses that she's given to help us think about what researchers think qualifies as BI and what reviewers think does. We hope through ARIS that we can kind of align those a little better. So congratulations, Susie. Could you please say a few words?
Thanks, Matt, so much for that introduction. And hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm really honored to be participating here with you today. So as many of you probably know, I have retired from NSF after 23 years there. Many probably said, well, finally, she's retiring. Yes, it's been a long ride. It's been a great ride. I started working with NABI in about 2015. I went to the Philadelphia summit. And then, as Matt mentioned, over the years, I learned a lot more about what you do by attending many of your annual meetings. More recently, I supported the evolution from NABI to ARIS. And I've always believed that the work that you do is just incredibly important. There's just so much to grapple with when we talk about merit review processes, and particularly with broader impacts. And having a community resource like ARIS is just great because it helps the research enterprise to actually work on some of the challenges related to merit review. So that's what I'd like to talk about today, is some of these challenges, and also have put forth some ideas for change, or at least some thinking about change. But first, I want to start with what I think most everyone can agree on. And that's really the high-level vision or high-level goals of the research enterprise. Most everyone believes, I think, that sound scientific research and breakthrough discoveries are critical to a healthy and thriving society. And I think today we also, or most of us, believe that full participation of scientists and engineers everywhere is equally critical. But the question is, how do we do this? And I think the name of your organization implies an answer. Advancing research impact in society. There's a kind of linear causality implied there. The challenges and the controversies really start when we kind of come down from those high-level visions and goals that we can articulate, and we think harder about how to actually achieve them. And as we know, it's particularly true when we get to broader impacts and how they are directly related to the research. So there are innumerable open questions about broader impacts, and you've heard them all. So I'm just going to name a few just to go through the list here a little bit. What do broader impacts really mean? How do you give the best advice to a potential PI? How does a program director at NSF actually explain to their PIs and to their reviewers and panels what's actually expected when they write a broader impact section or they're doing the review of them? How do we make PIs accountable? How do we make sure that what they say in the proposal, they're actually going to carry out? And what do all these individual broader impact efforts amount to anyway, across time or across a career? So I'm not saying that NSF doesn't have a great policy guide. It does. The NSF PAPPG, articulates how we're supposed to carry out merit review and defines intellectual merit and broader impacts. And certainly NSF has innovated and evolved its merit review processes over the years based on what we have learned, as well as from feedback and directives from the National Science Board, Congress, and other stakeholders. So the merit review that was carried out in 1998 when I started at NSF is quite different from what we were doing and what we were thinking when I left in 2021. So after 23 years, what have I come to believe? Well, first, I think that intellectual merit and broader impacts are intricately connected. Together, they comprise the research project. That's what's reviewed. That's what gets carried out. That's where the funding goes. Yet I think we need a better understanding of this connection and why this connection, this tight connection, this double helix, if you will, is so important to success. Second, for broader impacts to be achieved in the world, I believe that the research team needs to mobilize or move their research products and processes beyond the lab, out into the world. And I use the word mobilize intentionally here. So if the work involved in intellectual merit implies the creation of new knowledge, then the work entailed for broader impacts means taking that new knowledge in whatever form it may take and moving it out into the larger community. How exactly that is done and to what effect is often very implicit or tacit and held tightly within a research team or a research community. I think that the research enterprise needs to learn how to make knowledge mobilization much more explicit. Now, that's easier said than done, but I think this is an important contribution of ARIS. You've already explored and made much more explicit the work that many PIs across the country carry out in terms of doing excellent broader impacts in their projects. And I believe that you have shown these critical links between the intellectual merit and the broader impacts and how both are necessary. And so I would suggest that perhaps some analysis of this corpus, this historical corpus that you've collected over the years, would make an excellent research project, perhaps for some of your fellows. And then finally, I believe that understanding intellectual merit and broader impacts within a kind of dynamical framework better supports the evaluation and assessment of research projects. We all know that research funding comes from our own taxpayer dollars, and NSF needs to show its stakeholders that these dollars are well spent. Today, that is hard to do without conducting extensive one-off research projects. And we've done quite a few over the years. For example, NSF has done some research to link research projects that were done 20 or 30 years ago with patents that are just coming out today. The Computer Science Directorate over the years has funded National Academy of Science to conduct studies on how billion-dollar industries have evolved from government and private research funding. And more amazingly, they've actually figured out how to portray those relationships in really clear graphical formats and then publish them in studies so you can actually see the impacts of the research. And wouldn't it be great if NSF could visualize the positive impacts of research in the larger society in real time and across all of its programs? Well, that's something for the future. But to summarize, I think together the research community could build an extensive knowledge base about broader impacts and the mobilization of knowledge. We should fund and carry out rigorous research, publish papers, start journals, hold conferences, make the work visible, in other words. NSF, with the help of ARIS and this knowledge base, or many knowledge bases, could develop a more explicit understanding of this link between research and impacts in society. As far as I'm concerned, that is really the holy grail. If we can learn from what we are actually doing and understand those causal links, we can work to improve them. And that should actually accelerate outcomes and make them more excellent. And then finally, wouldn't it be great if researchers could be more explicit about the links between their research, the knowledge creation, and their intended impacts in all of the research products that they put out there, in their papers, in their presentations, whatever it is that they put out into society. If they would do that, I believe that new knowledge would penetrate much more deeply, more broadly into society. So I want to end by thanking you so much, ARIS, for this award. I'm truly honored to receive it. There's quite a pantheon of previous BI champions. I'm immensely proud to be part of that group. I want to thank the ARIS Award Committee. Thank you, Matt, for chairing that. I want to thank the ARIS leadership team, especially Susan Reno and Julie Rizian, whom I've worked with the most closely over the years. But believe me, I recognize that every single one of you is absolutely essential. I've enjoyed meeting with you, working with you. I have found the community to be welcoming, warm, inclusive, and incredibly passionate about all that you do. And I know that you're going to continue to grow and continue to be a force for good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Susie. We are going to transition now to like a panel discussion with the BI champions. Before that, though, I would like to, again, thank all the awardees for their tireless work in our field. I'd like to encourage all of you to consider nominating a worthy colleague next year for an award, or to consider self-nominating. Recognizing the great work being done in our field is important to our organization, and is important for raising awareness of the impacts of research on our society. So the way that the panel is going to go is that I have some prepared questions for Susie and Bruce. However, since this is more of a traditional style Zoom, if you have a burning question that you would like to ask them, add it to the chat and I will try to get to it time dependent. Okay. So first, I would like to just kind of throw this out to Susie and Bruce. So we all struggle, I'm sure, speaking with people in our family that don't know what broader impacts are. So could you kind of both talk about an exemplar, a clear example of effective societal benefits of research that you've seen, like an example that you would use when you're describing to others that don't know what research impact is?
Bruce, do you want to go first?
Sure. So if I'm talking to school principals, let's say, what they want to hear about is improved student achievement or retention of teachers, and how our professional development can affect positively both of those through various interventions. And that's something that a principal or a superintendent of school gets right away. I mean, there are lots of research programs that go into school districts, and the outcomes are unclear to or the benefits are unclear to the district leaders. But if you can talk about return on investment, teacher retention, or improve student achievement, those are the kinds of things that hit home and make sense to those sorts of district decision makers.
Okay, so I'll just add that the great scientific answer is it depends. And it depends on the field of inquiry. It depends on the broader impacts that are being engaged. But I'll tell you what I really, really like to see in the work that's done in broader impacts is quite a bit of effort being made to really move that knowledge out into society. And I know it takes a huge amount of effort to do that. And some of the best write-ups that I've ever seen are write-ups for awards. So the Alan T. Waterman Award, for example, the PCASE Awards, Presidential Early Career Awards for Science and Engineering. And so, some of the things that I have seen in those award write-ups are very clear articulations of not just the research that is being done, but the impacts that the research has actually had and what the PI and the research team had to do to actually make those impacts. And I'm remembering, a PCASE awardee who was a quantum scientist. And I was so enamored of the fact that he had, I think it was a Friday afternoon quantum pizza event to try to get all the kids to come. Quantum is really, really hard. And people shy away from it. And yet it's really, really important. And so, he actually went through the effort of having an open session to get people to start to understand what it is to try to draw students into that field. He actually had a radio program, I think like every Friday night in the local, public radio station. Again, trying to talk about quantum and what it might do and trying to get people to understand it, want to fund it. And I think that these endeavors, these kinds of efforts are hard and they cost money, they take time. And I think that having a support structure behind the individuals who want to do these things at the institution, within the professional organizations, is absolutely critical to more of our PIs being able to make these efforts. Otherwise, it just takes way too much time and takes too much away from their research.
Great, thanks. So, since you've been involved in BI for a long time, two-part question, what has both surprised you about and what has disappointed you the most about the way that broader impacts has developed over the past 20 or 25 years?
Should I go, Susie?
Sure, go ahead.
So the thing that's disappointed me the most is that in my generation, many of my colleagues have not been quicker to embrace the importance of the societal relevance of broader impacts. That's not across the board, but there's still some professors sort of at my stage that still don't understand or care to understand about broader impacts. So that's disappointing. What's surprising, although perhaps it shouldn't be surprising, is that I really feel great that the next generation, like when I teach broader impacts to graduate students here at the university, they get it. Okay, so they've not been brought up in a culture of only doing intellectual merit and then having broader impacts foisted upon them 23 or 25 years ago, like they were with me, and some of my colleagues poo-poo it. But with the early career scientists these days, they get it. So it's pleasantly surprising how easy it is to you don't even have to sell it to them; they just get it, and that's really exciting and bodes well for the future of broader impacts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Bruce just said. I mean, it's absolutely a correct, I think, rendition of kind of the history of the acceptance of broader impacts. I mean, but I have to tell you that even during my time at NSF, when broader impacts, are a criterion that everyone has to engage with, how many times I have heard, why don't we just do away with broader impacts? Why do we still have to do those? It just takes too much time, too much energy, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's been a real disappointment to me. But I, again, agree with Bruce that this next generation, I mean, a lot of people go into fields, not just because of the intellectual merit of what they're going to do, but because they realize they can make an impact. They want to make impacts. That's part of the drive of taking up different professions. And so I'm just so thrilled with that. I think it's a whole new way of thinking about scientific research and its importance to society. And again, the surprise to me is that so many people really have bought into it and really have, started to accept it. And I guess it's also surprising how well people can actually do with their broader impacts, because I don't believe that we have a very good infrastructure of support. I totally think that ARIS is doing a world of good and has done. I think that the community of BI professionals is just so incredibly helpful. But I think we need to do more. I think, I talked about research and research-based. I think we need to learn much more about what we actually do and what bodes well for success of individuals and what leads to a society that can continue to thrive and grow and benefit from all of this research.
So to follow up, Bruce, do you have any kind of idea why the younger generation seems to get it where the older generation doesn't, generally speaking?
So that's sort of a difficult question. I would say that it has to do with the way in which the older generation broader impacts were foisted upon us. We didn't know how to do them, and many of my colleagues said, "Why am I going to waste my time on this when I just should be doing the research?" Okay. So it was an imposition of sort of a compliance that initially was, and many of my colleagues just didn't want to do it, but they knew they had to do it in order to get funded. Whereas the students these days, they don't have that sea change, a fundamental shift in how they have to think about how they prepare their proposals. It has to be done this way now, so they're already used to it. So that's why I think it's a generational thing where the imposition of broader impacts by some of my colleagues, they didn't react well to it. Where it was graduate students these days, it's not a problem. They understand that they're going into science, not just for doing the science, but as you said, Susie, to make a difference, or a career that allows broader impacts.
Right. So I don't think anybody wants to just sit in the lab or in the observatory, in the basement, just, having been in computer science most of my life, working on programs. They really want that work to have an impact. So lots of programs like Computer Science for Social Good have started up. I mean, it's really been something that the young people have taken up. It's a real cultural shift.
Thanks. So let's say that you have a crystal ball and you have the ability to see into the future. What do you expect the BI landscape to look like over the next 10 to 20 years? Kind of the same amount of time since kind of BI started.
Susie, why don't you go first?
So I don't know that I can go all the way 10 years. That's a long time. But I know what I want in the immediate future, and I made some of those suggestions already. But I really do want to see more experimentation on how we achieve broader impacts in society and how we can show that we have achieved them. So one of the big issues is not that individuals don't carry them out, because I think that most PIs really do the work that they propose, but it's just that we do not know how to explain, we do not know how to visualize, we don't know how to portray what those broader impacts are, because most projects, last just, up to 3, 4, 5 years, very few 10 years, right? And so, actually, and you're only being funded for that period of time. The impacts actually start much, much longer after that. And so I think we need to collect data. I think we need to, as I said, do these experiments. I think we need to innovate on how we think about, being able to explain to people. So often now when we talk about broader impacts, we talk about examples. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. But again, they're one-off. And then that begs the question, what does this all add up to? And quite frankly, we know it adds up to great things. We live in a great society. There are tremendous social advances, technological advances, medical advances, you name it. But how do we show that link between the money that went into the research, and then the impacts that happen years later? And I think it's on us to figure that out. And I would hope that over the next few years, we would actually be able to come up with ways to do that, and that our stakeholders would gain a much bigger appreciation of the value of basic research. It's not a black box, right? It's not a mystery how these impacts come about. And I think that would mean a lot more funding for NSF, and that means funding a lot more research. That means that we actually, are going to have more discoveries. I mean, it would all benefit society. I think it's quite important that we think about those linkages and connections.
Yeah, so my crystal ball for 5 years from now would be that, in my opinion, the Includes program at NSF, or the Includes initiative, resulted in a sea change of how we think about what we do at with NSF money. And I now am arguing that basically any broader impacts project or component has to include some sense of broadening participation in science. So I see an increasing emphasis on broadening participation as continuing to become of greater importance in NSF projects.
I sure hope that's true, Bruce.
So I'd like to follow up with Susie. And so who do you think is the right field or the right people to do research on broader impacts?
Oh, I think it starts with you guys, right? I think that you guys need to build a research community. I think, you've got, you're doing experimentation. You've been funded to do some experiments. You've got fellows now who are interested in what this all means. And so we can talk normatively about what we should be doing, and we can talk about the vision, but I think we have to get down to nuts and bolts of how we actually do it. And I don't think there's one answer out there. If I knew the answer, I would tell you. I don't have the answer. We all have the answer, right? And so we need to bring it together, analyze what we're doing, learn from what we're doing, and then constantly improve, right, as we learn. That's the only way, I believe, to move forward. And so I think that, as a community resource, ARIS is the center of this action. And I believe that the research community would be completely behind it. You have a large community now, you've grown. I think you're ready to do it. I know it's a big lift, a heavy lift, but hopefully it's aspirational and it's something that you would take up.
Well, I think it's certainly something that we would all benefit from, and it certainly, if we can kind of create some evidence, it further justifies our requests and the money that's invested in programs like a lot of us are engaged in. So I have one more prepared question, and then I would really like to open it up to the audience if there's anything else. But we are kind of butting up against 4:30. So what do you both think that groups like ARIS need to do to inspire more people to embrace broader or research impacts? Obviously, aside from research and things like that, what else do you think that groups like us should do?
Well, so I'll start, Bruce, just to say that that over the years, I have found that broader impacts are what's actually done is equally exciting and impactful, as the actual research that gets done. And I think that we've, kind of because of how Bruce was explaining in the early days, it was something that was imposed, that was more hidden. I think making this excitement more visible, I think with young people wanting to make an impact in society and kind of, it's a big selling point, actually, what you're doing and how you're thinking about the research enterprise. And, I think we always do a really bad job of selling what we do or advertising, letting others know. And so I think that excitement, fossils and museums, Bruce mentioned, or, for young people, right? That's really exciting to kids, and somehow they lose it. Or, if you want to be I don't know, some kind of oh God, I'm forgetting what kind of science. But if you get to you carry out some of that science early when you're young, whether it's water quality and working with bacteria, flooding, and as you're a young person and you have research experience, again, you're going to carry that through into your later life. And it's that excitement, right, about how research can be used in society that I think really needs to be played up.
Yeah, so I'll be brief because we are running up on the end of time. It'd be interesting to hear if there are questions, but I would say have ARIS strategically focus on the next generation of scientists, because they're the ones that are going to bring you into the future and figure out ways in which you can do that more effectively.
Great. Thanks to both of you. Are there any questions from the audience? So I would like to thank both of you again. It's people like you that kind of have really carried the torch for broader impacts and have created a field that we all believe in and work really hard in. So thanks so much for all that you've done. And I would like to turn it back to Susan Reno at this point. I think she'll probably close things up. And thanks again.
Congratulations to all our awardees. Thank you all for being here. Bruce and Susie, always a pleasure. I want to thank everyone who had a part in the summit. I know it was a little different than our usual virtual fair. We're hoping to be back together again in Baltimore next year. I want to thank, anytime you thank somebody, you forget someone, but I do want to thank all of our committee for the awards. Thank you for our committee, to all of our conference committee. Thank you to the conference planning office, Jen and Sarah. You never get to see them, but they're behind the scenes making all the magic happen, and without them, it wouldn't happen. So thank you both for all the work that you do. A special thank you to Sarah Vassmer. Again, you don't see her behind the scenes a lot, but she does the work that keeps all the trains running. So we really thank you for all of that. I just want to say have a great holiday weekend. Be safe, and we're looking forward to seeing you at ARIS 2023.